What's up, everybody? Welcome back to another episode of Day One Radio right here on Live Hip Hop Daily, where they live hip hop daily. Is that the slogan here? Yeah.
Hilarious.
But my name is Maurice Garner. I got my man Brandon Peters to my right. What's going on, man?
Hey, man, just out here grinding, hustling. Been traveling around the country, man. So, you know, make sure that y'all follow us on Day One Radio on all your social media platforms, as well as follow Hip Hop Trivia ATL. And you can hear us on everything, and you can see us on Live Hip Hop Daily, man. So we we always bring you the stories that haven't been told, or stories that haven't been told correctly, and
sometimes stories that we just found out about.
Yeah. So like we go back with our guest today, man. D-Day, now Donald Albright.
Yeah, either one, whichever.
Yeah, we go back for a long time, man, and it was crazy. I was speaking with another friend of ours, Deshaun Kennedy. Shout out to Donkey Kong. And he was like, man, Donald is doing the podcast thing now. And most people know you from the music business.
Right.
So we'll definitely get into the podcast thing. But, man, how did you first start out working in the music business? Because you co-founder of what is the New Noontime, right?
Right.
Noontime,
Yeah.
Muco. How do you say it?
Muco. Yeah.
Okay, yeah.
Noontime.
Right. Which, you guys have worked with, Lloyd, August Alsina.
Yep.
Cherish a number of artists, but before
Jim Crow,
yeah, that's old school.
Yeah,
that was Jazzy, B Cox. Yeah.
For the youngsters, Polo the Don was once in a group called Jim Crow.
Right.
They had a few bangers.
Yes,
Go
sir.
look up on your YouTube or your streaming service, figure that out. So, how did you get started in the music business, man?
Man, it was kind of like I get started in a few different things. It's just kind of by accident. Like I was in college, going to Clark Atlanta University,
yes,
and
sir.
actually I got me and Deshaun go back to 8th grade, 7th grade,
Right.
We got some passes to go to a club or something, right? We went to the club, the guy who gave us the passes happened to be outside, and we couldn't get in because we weren't 21 years old yet. So he was like, man, don't trip, here's some passes for this event tomorrow. The event the next day was 112 Platinum Party. So no carding, no nothing. We get in there and it's like the Brat, JD, 112, Jagged Edge, Jazz, you name it. Everyone's in there.
Right.
And we're just like, hey, I don't know what we're doing in here, but we might as well start hollering at some people, getting some business cards and whatever. So we ended up getting a business card from Tye Samuel, who was in promotions at LaFace Records at the time. And that was our beginning into the music industry. We started doing street team work for free, just running around the city, putting up poster boards, passing out flyers, and that ended up turning into a promotions company.
D-Day.
Yeah, D-Day Entertainment, yep. Yeah. And in about 98, we started that company, D-Day Entertainment, yep.
So how did you end up transitioning to the management side of things and just kind of strategy and putting things together?
Well, tell folks who you managed too, though.
Yeah,
so, I mean, the transition was kind of, it was just really wanting to learn and do more. We never actually, even starting the company, take it one step back, I never really tried to start the company. Like it started, I was the only one with a car back then. It was costing money to go out and promote. So I was like, look, it's 5 of us, we got to all chip in on the cost. So when it started making money, it would just turn into a business. So, but it just grew from promotions to understanding, retail and radio and mix show, and then starting to be around all these other artists, I just started seeing really talent around me on my street team. So I was like, the first guy I ever managed was just a rapper who was on my street team. And I thought I was doing it big. I was doing my little flyers and everything. And then so I started learning more. When I met Noonie from one of the founders of Noontime, we did marketing and promo for Jim Crow when they were on Interscope. And then what happened was I moved to LA for a while, experienced the music industry out there, and then Noon offered me a marketing position at Show Enough. He was co-founder of Show Enough with Jazzy Faye, Sierra, Cherish, and I said, hey, I'll take it. Took the marketing job, and we just hit it off. I mean, he's from Oakland, I'm from San Jose. We have history together, so it just worked. So I ended up going from an employee on the marketing side to when he decided to get out of the record, the label business and back into the management business, he was like, why don't you come on and be my partner? So I was like, man, let's do it. And one of the first artists that we had was Lloyd, so we managed Lloyd throughout really the height of his career through the Street Love days, Bedrock, all those hits, and then managing producers. Cassius J, who produced for, does a lot with Zaytoven, Justin Bieber, Migos. Yeah, he's on fire. Knucklehead, who did a lot of the August Alsina stuff. We ended up managing August through the height of his career. So yeah, it was a wild ride. It was fun. I was, from 20 years old to probably, like 35. I was traveling around the world just having a ball. So it didn't seem like work, but it was, we was getting a lot done and accomplishing a lot.
So people obviously, we said, know you from the music business, and you've kind of stumbled upon another business that is going crazy, man. And it's funny because you never know the people that are behind the scenes.
Right.
At things. We see the front people all the time, but you never know the people that are behind the scenes. So you are heavily involved in the podcast business. Now, if anyone listening to this, you probably listen to Up and Vanish as well, which is one of the most successful podcasts ever. In less than a year, over 100 million downloads.
Yeah, it's been crazy.
Yeah, which is nuts, and you're one of the people behind that, man. So how did that whole thing start with TenderFootTV and you guys launching a platform that brought this podcast to light?
Really, it started. So about 4 years ago, I just got a random email from a music video director who wanted to shoot a video for an artist that I was managing. I was like, yeah, cool, let's figure it out. We ended up shooting probably 20 videos together, building a relationship. That director's Payne Lindsay, and he's always been into film and doing short form stuff like documentaries and commercials, stuff like that, obviously music videos. So we've been producing content together for 4 years. And about a year and a half ago, I saw the change that was going on in the music industry, and artists were becoming more they were already independent, but they were becoming more independent because you could blow up and get on without management, without a label, without anything, and artists became harder and harder to deal with because they had more and more control and almost were feeling so empowered that they could all do it on their own. My homeboy can manage me, and I can just run the charts. You know what I'm saying? So I was like, man, I need another outlet. So I wasn't completely burnt out of music. I love the music industry, but I needed some fresh start. And Payne came to me and was like, look, I'm tired of doing this fucking music videos. I want to get into doing something similar to The Jinx, which was an HBO docuseries, or something similar to Making a Murderer, which is another docuseries on Netflix. So he was like, I'm gonna find a case, and I just need you to have my back. Let's just do this shit together. And I was like, man, I'm down. I need something new. And
now, when you say have my back, what was he really saying? Because I don't know how I would react if somebody just came to me. I got this new business opportunity. I don't know what I'm doing. I think you know what you're doing. Just have my back.
Right. Honestly, I think we had built up kind of just a working relationship and a trust, and he just knew I can't do it by myself. Who do I trust? Who can I can bounce ideas off of? Who can fund it if need be? But then, soon after that idea came about, we were like, look, to actually do this the right way, the funding needs to be serious. And there's, we have the ideas, we have some means, but not enough to fund the whole doc. It's on that level that we want to do it. Yeah.
That's a lot of money. What was it about his eye, though, that you saw in the music videos and the short docs that made you think that he could even pull that off?
Really, honestly, it's I'm not the easiest person to work with. I'm like the kind of person who I have a ton of ideas, but I don't produce music, but I can sit down with a producer and be like, look, this is what I want. And a lot of people don't like that. Producers don't like that, or artists. I don't write music, but I could tell an artist, look, I don't think that's right. You should do it like this. A lot of artists or writers don't like that. But with Payne, I was always able to communicate my vision to him and vice versa, and we'd always come out with a great product. So it was just I trust you. Everything we've done together has come out a certain way. Even if it wasn't perfect, we knew where our missteps were. You know what I'm saying? So I just felt look, I trusted his vision, and I like his eye. I've seen it over 20 or so videos with budgets from $2,500 to $75,000. I've seen what he can do with that. So I was like, look, and he had a short documentary called Our People. that was really dope, well produced. I mean, so his ear for the music, his ear for like the vision of what it should look like, I knew it was there. You know what I'm saying? So that just told me that whatever we do, I think the quality will be there. It's just a matter of can we get the right story, the right information, and all that stuff. And he proved himself to actually be as good of a, you know, like a web sleuth or amateur investigator as he is actually behind the camera or producing the music for the series. Like he killed it. I mean, he made the case what it is today.
Definitely, and we'll get into that. But how did it transition from, hey, we don't have the bread to produce this docuseries, so let's make it audio?
Right. So he came to that realization before I did. He just, because we had talked about here and there, and what he told me was, look, I'm gonna go do the legwork and I'm gonna come back to you when I have something. I was like, cool. I, you know, buried my head back into the music stuff. He came back with like, look, here's the case. I've been researching it, but I decided that it's not gonna work out as a docuseries, not yet. We can get there later, but right now we can do it. You know, he was inspired by Serial to be like, look, I can tell this story the same way they told their story through a podcast. And if I can edit videos, I can surely edit just audio. So we knew he knew he could do it self-contained from his apartment and produce the product. And that's all we needed to get started, you know, was that.
And the case we're talking about is Tara Grinstead, which was a lady who disappeared from her crib in what was it, Ocala?
Ocilla.
Ocilla, Georgia. Yep. And, you know, obviously, you know, Payne found the case and all of that stuff and brought the idea to you. Now, as somebody who we were talking, like, you were not in the podcast, you really wasn't super into true crime. Like, what were your thoughts? Like, is this something we need to touch, or is it?
Oh, so like I told you before, like podcasting, I knew what podcasting was, but I had never even listened to a podcast.
Right.
So, but I was like, okay, he kept saying, listen to Serial, you'll get it. And I said, look, I get it because I love true crime. It's just, you know, on TV, I love all the docuseries. I love Criminal Minds, Law and Order. I love crime, period. So I was into it already. And the story, just the initial, if I told you 10 facts about this case, you'd be like, dang, that does sound interesting. So that's all it took for me was to hear those 10 things and be like, hey, I'm with it. I mean, he already had like a couple months in on investigating it. So what he told me just was compelling enough to be like, hey, there was no second guessing. It was like, yo, I'm down. What do I need to do? I feel like I'm not doing enough. Like, what do I need to do to push this thing forward?
Now, being the person that's like on, like, what as far as like what you're bringing to the table, like, did you do your own due diligence? Cause I know you said you trusted dude, but it's like it's one thing if somebody's coming to you like, I got this story, I've done the research. Did you go and look at it for yourself? Like, oh, let me go back and read these newspaper clippings. Let me go back and see if you really know what you're talking about.
Yeah.
Like, how'd you approach it when he was just hitting you with all this interesting information?
Yeah, so he actually told me about the case before it was like maybe 3 months before. So I knew some of it. He gave me kind of a list. I Googled it. I saw that it was interesting and compelling. And then when he came back to me, he had, I believe it was at least the first episode was done. So I was able to hear the first episode of how it was starting. And I just knew like, okay, this sounds dope. It sounds like something I would want to, it sounds like something I want to listen to or watch. So it wasn't just the story was good, the way he was telling the story was good. His voice was good, and just the production of it, it just seemed like, man, if I like it, that's my thing. Anytime I hear a song that I like, I need everyone else to feel what I felt. You know what I'm saying? Right. When I heard that song, or why I'm so passionate about this artist, it's now a mission of mine for everyone else to feel that same way. That's like, so I've always been like super connected to the creative, whether it be through marketing or through the development side. So when I heard that, I was like, okay, I need to make everyone else feel the same way about this project that I feel about it now. Because I was just a listener at that time. So I was experiencing it the same way that everyone else would for the first time.
Gotcha. No, when you guys first put the show out, like, you are a marketing guy, like, so there's a plan behind everything. Yeah. So what was kind of like the initial plan to push this out, and obviously it exceeded your expectations. Nobody could have expected, you know, where it's going.
Right.
But how quickly did it get there for you where you saw, oh, other people get it?
So I think the podcast launched. He had a nice buzz beforehand. He put out a couple of some visuals. He shot like a
you guys had a trailer and everything.
He shot a trailer for it. It looked like it was going to be a TV show or something. So it looked the presentation was great. So that got on, and plus the case, it's been, it was 10-year-old cold case, a high school teacher, former beauty queen, small town. I mean, this has all the makings of like this gossip central of like, man, how could she go missing of all people? She had a lot of friends, she had, family, she had students. There was so much that was drawing people into this case. So the people in that town just started talking up crazy. So it had a Facebook buzz and Instagram going into the first episode. And I think the first couple of weeks we did about like 5,000 listens, and we was like, man, that's crazy. We're killing it. Then we started getting more and more interest, and he came to me, and like the first big ask was like, look, I think to push this over the top, we need to get more press on it, and we need to buy an ad on another podcast. Right. So I was like, okay, let me see what my financial situation is. I was like, man, so I pulled like an old dusty credit card out of a drawer. I was like, let me check the balance on this thing. It's like, okay, I got about $3,000 of available credit on this credit card. And we ended up talking to AJC, who had a podcast called what was it called? Breakdown. I watched that. You watched that? Listen to it, right? I make that mistake all the time. So yeah. Breakdown is basically about the Justin Ross Harris case. It was a hot car death, and so it's an Atlanta case, but it was a current case, and they were following the trial. So we just felt like, look, it's an Atlanta case. We're an Atlanta company with a Georgia case. So we negotiated their ad price down from like $3,000 to like $1,500. Swiped the card for the $1,500 ad, bought about $1,000 worth of Twitter and Facebook ads, and then the same week that all those ads hit, iTunes decided to give us the new and noteworthy. And then from that moment of those ads and that little feature, like it just took off. Wow. And the number just started to grow. Like I got a spreadsheet at home. It's like, August, September, October, all the numbers. It's like 5,000, 16,000, 50,000, 150,000, like every month. And then it was like, when we hit 1 million in a month, we were like, this is crazy. Like, something's wrong. They were like, what if we get to 10 million total downloads? And then we get to 10 million. I'm like, man, this is crazy. And then we started going like, man, we're going to get to 100 million downloads. And then like we were at about, I think by January, we were at like 15 million downloads. And then like it went crazy from there because there were like breaks in the case and all that. And we went crazy. But like you wouldn't have known. We just kind of followed it and followed what we needed to do and just took a slow approach to like, okay, what makes sense within our budget that we can do in this one ad? And then iTunes said, hey, this is, and honestly, I think iTunes featured it because Steve Wilson, he's the man at Apple Podcasts now, and back then he runs the Twitter and all that stuff, and he liked the cover art, and he posted the cover art on the Apple Podcasts page, and I think because of the cover art and just maybe seeing kind of the ratings of where we're at, we're like 4.5, 5 stars. He just gave the new and noteworthy, and I mean we're grateful. So it was, it went crazy after that.
Definitely. Do you think that without Up and Vanish that there would have been an arrest made in this case?
Personally, I don't think so. I mean, if you look at the case, I mean it was 10 years when he started started looking into it. He was 10 years old. It was 11 years by the time the podcast came out. Just this past month was a 12-year anniversary. So you look at no official suspects and no arrests for 11 years. And then a podcast comes out that generates 15 million downloads and chatter going crazy just across the country, and especially in this small town of 3,000 people. And 6 months after the podcast comes out, there's an arrest made. And I mean, in the press conference, the GBI, I think it was Jason Shadell, the GBI, said that he credited the media for keeping the story alive. And one thing that we know, which other journalists have told us, is that when you cover a story in the news, you cover it for that one, the anniversary of it, or one new break in the case. But we covered it every single week for 6 months, and there's no consistent coverage like that. Even when you do a documentary, I mean, it airs and it's popular for a week, and then it's big on social media. People will discover it, but it's like we had this growing thing week after week, bigger and bigger. So I think the pressure in that town was just like people were talking, and there's probably about 10 people who knew what happened, who hadn't come forward, and they started talking amongst themselves, talking to other people, and then next thing you know, somebody broke down, and you know, basically the guy just confessed to his girlfriend when he was drunk. I guarantee the podcast was in the front of his mind,
right?
And we were talking about like former students who were suspects and that circle of friends that were his friends. And next thing you know, like he confessed to his girlfriend. She came out, and her mom said something to the GBI, and arrests were made.
Pillow talk, boy.
Yeah, I'll get you every time.
But man, like that said, like how hot is too hot when dealing with something like that? You know what I'm saying? Because it's like, you know, I remember like episodes of Serial when they're like, we gonna go knock on dude's door and see if he's home. It's like, so you gonna just knock on the door of a person that you think killed somebody and ask him, did you kill somebody, sir? You know what I'm saying? So like in this kind of work now, you know what I'm saying, which is a transition for you, like how hot is too hot? You know what I'm saying?
It's like a personal decision. I mean, it's all about how prepared are you, number one. And I can tell you we weren't prepared, because if we had a big budget, we'd be down there with security and all, you know, strapped up and, you know, everything. But it was like we didn't know who did it. There were like legit 5 people who probably looked very, very suspicious. At least 5. 3 for sure, and at least 2 others who were like very suspicious around that time. And it's one of those things where since you don't know, there's nothing like, we know he did it, we just got to catch him up, which is kind of what happened in the Jinx. Everyone kind of knew who the guy was. We just got to get him caught up, get him trip over his own words. We didn't have that in this case. Our thing was like, let's just point out all the inconsistencies and really put the pressure on the GBI, because the things that they were saying turned out to not always be true. So we were like the truth tellers in this scenario, where some people just don't want to talk to the police. They don't want to talk to GBI. They want to remain silent, but they want the truth. They want this thing to be solved. So we were able to talk to people, but it got dicey sometimes. You know, there was a private investigator named Maurice Godwin who was hired by the family back in 2006. Been on the case for 10 years. He was like the go-between. He was the main source of information. And he told Payne, like, look, be careful when you go down there, because, you know, he had some bad experiences. So it got a little tricky at times. And then there were threats, you know, even later on, even like as recent as a couple months ago, people who just don't like the fact that arrests were being made, and they're kind of in this circle of people who may or may not have known. So yeah, there's a lot of, you know, internet thugging going on about the case, but, you know, we're not worried.
Right. A lot of the fans, or I would say some of the fans of the podcast, you know, after there was an arrest made, they felt like, some of them I've seen felt like you guys should have backed off, and it became speculative and, you know, a little sensational. Like, do you agree? What do you say to that?
Yeah, I think so. It all depends on how things developed up to that point, right? So yeah, an arrest was made, but we're able to tell you what the GBI isn't going to tell you, or we're able to point out things that the GBI said that may or may not be true, or from what we found weren't true. So perfect example, at the press conference, the GBI said, look, this guy has never been on our radar in 10 years. What we uncovered is that 2 months after she disappeared, the sheriff's department went out to the pecan orchard, which is the site where, at least one of the burn sites of the body, and was supposedly did investigation, or search the site. And they were called off to not search it. There's a kind of some gray area there. But what we got on the podcast was an actual sheriff's deputy who's, if you look it up on the internet, you'll see a sheriff's deputy walking Ryan Duke, who's the one who was arrested, into the courtroom for his arraignment. That sheriff's deputy we have on our podcast. He doesn't know he's being recorded because his grandson actually called him and asked him about it. And he's the sheriff's deputy who went out to that orchard to search. So the GBI was, them saying that they've never heard about this guy can't be true. And then what we just found out a month ago is that there's a second indictment on Bo Dukes, who's like charged as an accomplice, and he's now been charged again for lying to the police. But that was from 2016. So if he was on the radar and he's the accomplice and he was cooperating, clearly Ryan Duke had to be on their radar as well. So we're telling you things that you would have never known had you just sat behind your TV screen and listen to the GBI, right? So yeah, I get it, but there's more to be said about this case, and we're trying to just keep the people informed and keep this thing, you know, truthful, you know, at the end of the day.
Definitely. How do you, you know, this is obviously it's a business, and you guys have been doing live shows, which, you know, a lot of people have come out to, but how do you balance the business side and the fact that, you know, you're still dealing with a family's, you know, daughter, sister, whatever, being murdered? So how do you balance, you know, being tasteful, but also giving the people what they want?
Yeah, I mean, you know, you have to really tread lightly, but it's kind of hard. It's like, what do you want? You know, people always want justice, right? Everybody wants justice. But what does that look like? What if justice actually means that you're going to find out some things that you don't want to find out?
Right.
So our thing is always truth. So, you know, if you just go after justice, you may be able to, you know, make an arrest, but what people really want is the truth. They want to know who knew about this. Why was it covered up? Who knew about it for 10 years and didn't talk?
Right.
So we try to tell as much as we can, but also be respectful of the victim and the victim's family, where there's a ton of stuff that we didn't put in the podcast, you know, just rumors or people's opinions and things like that, where they might have had some good information about the case, but we may have cut out 20 minutes of what they felt about the victim or about a suspect, you know, or why they thought they were so guilty. Because honestly, 90%, or I'll say 100% of the town, aside from the 10 people that knew, everyone else thought that it was someone else. I mean, half the town probably thought it was the neighbor who wasn't even a suspect, but he was, you know, they had some suspicious things going on. The other half, maybe like 40% of the other people thought it was the ex-boyfriend, and the other 10% thought it was this other detective from another town who was rumored to be having an affair with the victim. And that was one thing that we had to tread lightly on. But, you know, when the victim's best friend confirms something, that's when it's okay to run with it. You know what I mean? It's like we're just telling the stories for these people who are associated with this case.
Right. No, you managed artists and dealt with the blow up, you know, guys blowing up before. So was there any point that you had to be like, all right, Payne, like you on Good Morning America, you on Nightline, you on regular news, I need you to just take it all in stride.
Yeah, like it's you know, it's first class tickets now, you know what I'm saying? I'm feeling that artist vibe a little bit. But no, I mean, because we've worked together for so long and we have like a business relationship before, like it's not artist manager relationship. It was never supposed, neither one of us was supposed to get famous, you know what I'm saying? So it's easy. I can talk him off the ledge of like, oh man, I'm wearing this today because I'm feeling like, you know, like, no, we're gonna do this a certain way. And he's not, you know, he's not going crazy with the fame. It's more, it's the fame of the product that we're dealing with. You know, it's one, you know, people associate Up and Vanish with this one case. And that's why they're able to judge it a certain way and be like, oh, you shouldn't do this, you shouldn't do that. I look at it as a brand. There's going to be 10 cases under this brand. There's going to be a TV series under this brand. There's going to be a documentary under this brand. It's more than just one case, even though what you know of it now is just one case. So, you know, we try to just keep it all into perspective of what we're trying to do long term and not get too far outside of what it is, whether that be because of fame, of individual fame or fame of the podcast. We want to keep it with the goal of like telling these great stories, these compelling stories, these tragic stories in a way that communicates and resonates to people and also gets to some truth. You know what I mean? And at the end of the day, if we can get to truth, I think we've done a good job.
Like, is it a failure if you take on a case and nothing happens? Like, you know, say if you get 200 million downloads and it's like, we ain't find shit, we don't know who did it, you know what I'm saying? It's like,
man, it's like we've set the bar for ourselves like so high. It's like, how do you even touch it next time, let alone clear it? Like, is it a failure? It may be to some people. I think our main thing is it's okay to say you don't know. It's okay to, if you're trying, if we uncover something, our goal is to maybe turn over the rock, and then maybe from there the police, the GBI, the FBI can find something. We're not out to solve every missing person's case or every murder. We're just looking into things, and we want to tell that story week by week, so that, because the main thing is this: if we're able to tell you a story that you want to continue listening to, that's the mark of success. Because if 200 million people are listening, that's 200 million people that want answers. So maybe that town will put more pressure on the sheriff or on the DA to do something. So it's really not about us. It's about the listeners and them having that voice, and that town, giving that town and the family that voice to where they can go and say, look, I need answers, because now the world knows about this case. I'm not just the one bugging you. You're getting emails on Facebook, and you're getting messages on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram. The world, from people from Australia and the UK, want to know what happened in this small town. Yeah. I think from there we let the people take it, and hopefully justice will come at some point, and we can be at least a part of that.
Yeah, obviously, you know, it's you don't have all the tools because you're not a detective or a lawyer or, you know, even a journalist. You are paying. But was there also kind of an advantage to approaching this because you're coming at it from just a regular human curiosity perspective?
Yeah, that was one of the biggest hangups, is that we kind of shouldn't be doing this. Payne's not a journalist. He's not an investigator. He's not a lawyer. So those are the people who traditionally are doing these type of shows, you know what I mean, right, and who are getting to the truth. And we never sold it as that. So so we never feel obligated to you know, tout these credentials or anything. All we said was, look, from the beginning, he said, look, I'm not a podcaster, so if I do this wrong, don't get mad at me. Mm-hmm. I'm not a journalist. I'm not an attorney. I'm not an investigator. So I'm just a guy who's a filmmaker, and I want to tell this story in a certain way. So it's kind of like the elephant in the room, you know what I'm saying? You just get it out early, and people are still going to be mad. Some people listen to episode 1 and be like, oh, I'm not going to listen to this because this guy doesn't have the credentials. I'm used to listening to this kind of thing. Right. And that's fine. Our goal really wasn't to go and make the podcast industry fall in love with what we were doing. Our goal was like, look, I want to find people like me,
right,
never listened to a podcast before. If they can listen to Up Advantage as their first podcast, now we've set the standard of what this is supposed to be.
100%. Man, what do you, especially from a business perspective, man, what attracted you to the podcast world?
I mean, like I said, it really didn't. It was kind of like, you know, I fell into it, and then I started learning the business, but it was exciting to learn something new. And it really was exciting to see how, I don't want to sound like disrespectful to what the podcast industry is, but it's not the music industry. The music industry is cutting edge. It's aggressive. It's bold. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. And podcast industry was very conservative.
Yeah.
You know, even
at the top, especially.
Especially, oh yeah. I mean, the startups, what you guys do, I mean, it's revolutionary compared to what they do at the top. At the top, it's a lot of checks and balances. A lot of, you know, say this line 100 times because I don't sound smart enough. Let me tout my credentials. Let me sound like I don't like listening to a lot of true crime podcasts because I feel like they're not talking to me. They're talking kind of over me. Mm-hmm. They're talking to hear themselves, how good they sound. Whereas when I listened to Up and Vanished, it was like Payne was just talking like Payne, a guy who didn't go to college, who's a filmmaker, who used to direct music videos. You know what I'm saying? He's talking to me how he talks to normal people. And so it was getting into the industry, I just noticed this huge void of like creativity on the marketing side, taking chances with the content. And I think it's because, you know, it's been a safe space and a space that's been kind of controlled by that top level of companies for so long, which is why I'm excited to do more and more. But the response that we're getting from people who are like even the establishment, like How Stuff Works is like the biggest for-profit podcast company out there.
Right. And
they happen to be in the same building as us in the Ponce City Market. So cross past them a couple times, and we're actually doing business with them on a new podcast,
on
which
the
is
Atlanta Monster.
Yeah.
Right?
So it's like to get the validation from a company like that, it's like, okay, I'll take that. So I'll take the good and the bad. So, but as long as someone like that is saying we're doing a good job, I'm with that.
Man, how does it feel though, like, and being one of the very few people of color in that level of the game?
That's one of the first things that I noticed and that I consistently talk about.
No,
I was like, hey, look around. You know, I see the shows. You know, I see, you know, kind of some of the radio shows that are adapted into podcasts.
Right.
And then, but just looking around, I'm like, okay, where's the network? You know what I'm saying? Where's the Black Gimlet, or where's the Black, you know, NPR, How Stuff Works or whatever? But there's shows, there's a few hosts, and I was like, look, I got an obligation to, you know, tell stories that I want to hear, that y'all want to hear.
Yeah.
You know, and I think that's one of the things that we're doing. Like, so Atlanta Monster. I mean, we hooked up with How Stuff Works. We're going to tell the story and reinvestigate the Atlanta child murders, which was, tragic events from 1979 to 81. Over 25 African Americans, youth
Right.
and kids and young adults went missing and then were later found murdered. And we're going to tell that story in a way that's true to the city, that is not just telling a story, but raising awareness about, the lack of coverage when it comes to this day missing black children, or so that's my obligation. It's like, how do I tell this story in a way that's like, I want to hear it or my people want to hear it. Like I had a moment where I was sitting in the office, we're talking about this Atlanta Monster podcast, and I was like, man, I had like, okay, everybody stop what you're doing. And I just laid down the black law of like, look, I'm the only black person involved in this.
Right.
So I'm gonna tell you if this shit sounds crazy, if this it's just gonna be acceptable to the black community. So, you're gonna hear me chime in on things. So be prepared for like for that, because I have to make sure that this sounds right. If it doesn't come out right, I'm to blame. Period.
Yeah.
With anything that misrepresents the black community, it's my fault. So I need to make sure that everyone knows that, like, okay, yeah, let's not do this, let's do that, or let's, do these things in a certain way that's respectable,
Right. And it's a story that needs to be told. I remember years ago, a professor at Clark, I can't remember Scott's last name, but he was also a cameraman at WSB.
Ah, okay.
And he had, he was here. He had just moved to Atlanta and was working at a news station when all of that was going on. And he was just telling me all the different conversations he would have with people in the FBI and things of that nature. And he was just like, man, none of us were really buying that Wayne Williams is the guy who killed all these kids. And he was like, it felt like so many different things, but you couldn't really prove it. So it's definitely something that needs to be looked into.
Yeah, I mean, we're deep in it right now. I mean, we probably got another month, 2 months of investigating and interviews, talking to FBI, talking to victims' families, definitely trying to get inside the prison to get word to Wayne Williams and get his participation in it, and just doing our best to tell the story about, honor the victims, but talk about the city, the culture at that time, and really just get the input from people who were living here, who were the age of those kids that went missing. You know what I mean? And but yeah, it's like I said, it's coming in January, but we're deep in it right now, and it's turning out really well.
Another joint that you guys have under Tenderfoot is Sworn.
Yeah.
How did that come together? Which Sworn to me feels like it's much more of the true crime that people would expect.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Because the guy with Philip, he's a lawyer, right?
Yeah, Philip Holloway. Yeah,
Philip Holloway is a lawyer. I listened to the Las Vegas episode, and it was just funny how I like that it's providing different perspectives, because the guy who was on that was the gun expert.
Yeah.
He was like offended at the assault rifle reference.
Extremely offended.
Yeah. It's like, so how did that whole thing come about? Because that's a lot more like straight laced.
Yeah. So Phil's a legal contributor to Up and Vanished. Once there was an arrest made in Up and Vanished, Phil came on. We just, like, Payne knew, like, I need more help to understand all these indictments and everything. And Phil was right there. He's helped out. He's hosted case evidence episodes where we dive deeper into the legal aspect. So he was interested. He said, "Hey, I want to talk to you guys about my own podcast." And we knew what he wanted to do. We talked about it, and he ended up wanting to do something that was kind of like his experiences in the legal system, kind of like those untold stories. And it's, like you said, more straight laced of a crime or true crime podcast. He hosts, we all produce it. Payne came up with the name and the design for everything, and it's kind of a group effort of how we pick the stories, how we decide to tell those stories. And we're looking forward to coming back next year with second season and talk about a wide range of different things. But it's an exciting one. Up and Vanished got to like number 2 on the iTunes charts. Sworn was like number 1 before it ever came out. So we were jealous that like we got all these downloads and reviews, and we still never got that number 1 spot. But maybe season 2. You never know.
You never know. Man, what excites you about this space?
Oh man, how young it is and how much it can grow. I mean, it's like getting into the music industry pre-digital. You know what I mean? It's like pre-Beat Machine or something like that. You know what I'm saying? Like seeing how far this thing can go, and not just. I mean, the technology is there. It's growing. Apple is investing a ton of money into, you know, Apple Podcasts, and you have people who are trying to compete with Apple. So there's money in the space, and the advertising model is just now being proven on the side of like the corporate advertisers. So I mean, I look at, you know, Coca-Cola and McDonald's and all those kind of people getting into the space now, between now and the next couple of years. So the money is going to get bigger, the opportunity is going to get bigger for everyone, and I think it's like getting in. You're not on the ground floor, but you're kind of like, you cheated and you kind of got it on the second floor when all the, you know, the kinks were worked out. And the crazy thing is that coming in from the music space, you're in this space, like I said earlier, it feels like there's a huge void. So it's exciting to be able to see so much potential in how far we can push this thing with, you know, why aren't we promoting podcasts like their movie releases? Why aren't we promoting like their album releases? Why are they just kind of under the radar, coming out to an audience that's there that listens to podcasts?
Right.
When there's not like an active thing with like bringing TV watchers into the podcast listening space. There's not enough of that going on. I think partially because the content has to be on the level. You need on the level of Stranger Things to get the Stranger Things people, you know,
right.
Viewers to come and listen to a podcast. It almost has to be better because they have to listen to it and not watch it. But like we talked about before, you know, with people commuting much more now in their cars, they're not watching TV in their cars, at least they shouldn't be. And, you know, with so much, there's people are moving away from TV, you know, or, you know, regular TV, moving away from radio. So now is the time to really throw that dope content out there and put the money behind podcasts. So that's what I'm all about. Is like, my goal now is I now understand the business. I now have the people that I'm dealing with are like on a level that I never thought bigger than I've dealt with in the music industry, or the people I'm dealing with in the podcast industry. So like, what can I do with the platform that I have and my resources is find other shows, find creatives and build shows around them, and just like really dial in and bring in the audience that I already know of. Like, where are my music people and my music creatives? I want to bring them into the podcast space and do, you know, there needs to be not just one mogul on Gimlet, there needs to be 5. There needs to be series, you know, there needs to be an Up and Vanished that's for Black victims. You know what I mean? Then, like, so we can, there's a ton of things. Like, I literally have at least 25 podcast ideas, some that we want to adapt to TV. I just don't have the manpower, the time to actually go out and facilitate and nurture these ideas. But it's coming. You know, the next year we have a lot of stuff planned that we want to do.
Man, the talent is most definitely out there for sure. It's just a matter of us coming together and working collectively. What advice, man, would you give to someone who has an idea, who kind of knows the technical aspects of it, but just doesn't know how to get into the podcast game?
It is literally the easiest game to get into. It's easier than music, and it's damn sure easier than TV and film. I mean, takes a miracle times 2.
It takes a lifetime.
To
start a life in it.
Right. So with podcasts, I mean, do the research on, you know, the show you want to do. You know, maybe you want to do it because you want to be the host. Always recognize the talent that you have. More importantly, you recognize the talent that you don't have. If you're not the best host for a great idea, find someone who is, and cut a show. You don't got to put it out. Cut a show, invest a little time and money, and then get that show to people. I would want to hear someone who says, look, I have a podcast that's not out yet, but here it is. But this is my plan to release it. And they're looking for someone to get it on the ground level with them. That's what I'd want someone to come to me with, because it shows me that you have, I can look at it and say what I like and don't like about it. It's not so far gone that I can't help you turn in the right direction or point in the right direction. So you just have to go do it and try it, and you'll know if it sounds good. And if it sounds good enough, get it to, you know, other hosts in the podcast industry. Hit people on Facebook and Twitter. Eventually you'll find someone who wants to listen, or you'll be able to say, look, I got enough creative, I got enough feedback and constructive criticism where I'm ready to put this thing out and at least test the market. And that's all you got to do. Start out small, develop a base, and then go right back to those same people that you sent it to originally and tell them about your numbers, tell them about what you've made, the changes you've made, and find those partners that can help you get it to the next level if you can't do it yourself.
Most definitely. Man, we appreciate you coming through, brother. Please let people know where they can. We was talking off there about the social media. Let them know where they can find, Tenderfoot and Up and Vanished and all that.
Yeah, so, Up and Vanished, it's on iTunes, it's on everywhere you can get your wherever you listen to your podcast. Social media is at Up and Vanished. Our company is TenderFootTV, at TenderFootTV. I'm like new to social media, like we talked about. I try to stay out of it, but at Albright03 is my Instagram. I think that might be my Twitter too. I don't know. I'm barely on that thing, but yeah, man. I appreciate the time, man. I appreciate what you guys are doing.
Definitely.
And let's do something together. That's what this whole thing is about. What I want to hear all ideas, and however I can help y'all out, help each other out, I'm down for it.
Most definitely. Appreciate y'all watching. Appreciate y'all listening. You're listening to Day One Radio. Make sure you follow us on social media. We'll see you next week with another dope show. And we'll have books next time. Remember, we were supposed to do a new book segment every week.
Yeah. Maurice is the books in that shit. What's over there? We'll grab some. Pretty sure there ain't no bad books in this building. Like, man,
there's a little bit of everything in this. This is actually I'm floored by what I'm seeing.
Our first show with Live Hip Hop, Maurice had a bunch of books in his bag, so we were supposed to do a book thing every week. So there is a table full of books sitting over here. So this one is a classic.
It's actually a classic.
Yeah, Ego Trip's Book of Rap List. Shout out to Elliot Wilson, man. One of the first dudes who really gave me a real shot in the business, who also owns Rap Radar, and I think he runs Black Music at Tidal or something like that.
Dope.
Yeah, so this is a great book. It's hilarious. If you don't have it, pick it up. It's the same company. So what was Elliot, Sasha Jenkins? Who else was over there?
Oh, those are the only two names I
They're like the all-star team. Yeah. They had everybody over at that joint, and they also did the White Rapper Show on VH1 and the Miss Rap Supreme on VH1. So pick this up if you don't have it. It's been out for a minute. You might be able to cop this for like $10 on Amazon or something like that.
Get your read on.
But it's one of the funniest books you'll ever read, and the lists are crazy for sure. But yo, we appreciate y'all watching. Appreciate y'all listening. We'll see you next week with another dope show.
Appreciate y'all, man.